Hey channel, Fernando from Sky-Fi Audio. Today we're going to talk about another accessory for the SL1200 and primarily one of the few performance accessories. A lot of the stuff that we offer is cosmetic because the 1200 is just so beautifully built. It really doesn't need much of anything. This is the KAB TD1000 fluid dampener. It mounts beautifully onto the tone arm itself and it actually dampens the motion of the tone arm. In this video, we're going to cover the installation of the TD1000 and we're going to do a few tests to see if it has any effect or impact on the compliance of the tone arm. We're hoping it doesn't. While we are attaching this tiny little piece of aluminum to the tone arm, it is close enough to the axis of the pivot of the tone arm that it should not really affect compliance, which we do not want to mess with. We find here that SL1200 tone arm with the Sumiko Starling is a brilliant match. When we specify turntables for customers, they always ask, well, what upgrade should I be doing? There's really not a lot to it. The feet on the SL1200G are made of metal and they have a dampener in it that is specific for this weight of turntables. So messing with the feet, as we used to do back in the 90s and 2000s, if you had an original SL1200, is not recommended. The mat that it comes with is also very, very high quality rubber. I've tried a bunch of different mats. I could not find any improvements. And there are some improvements on the head shell, but a lot of them are mostly cosmetic. You know, DS Audio makes a beautiful head shell that we sell a lot of. It's made out of machined aluminum, absolutely stunning piece, but again, not a measurable performance for us. We do have this record weight that we sell a lot of. This does flatten the record if you've got a little bit of warp in the vinyl itself, this particular weight, and it is in fact etched with the Technics logo. That's a nice improvement. And of course, super high quality cables. Turntables transmit a very, very low voltage. So if you're going to spend money on cables, this is the place to do it. Not particularly the power, but on the audio cable itself. So I'm going to move the turntable over to my workbench and let's start the installation. All right, let's look at our equipment for today. So we've got here the TD1000. We've got my trusty SL1200G. This is the silver version. And it's fitted with a ton of upgrades from Sky-Fi. We've got our super high quality acrylic plinth. This is super thick, really luxurious. And it's not hinged because you really don't want to be playing records with a hinged cover, at least not at a good volume. We've got our walnut wooden plinth. This one happens to be engraved with the Technics logo. And I've got here a new version of our record weight where now instead of laser etching, I've been experimenting with actually milling the logo into there, and this is one of the first prototypes. Should be available pretty soon on our website. Now this thing is absolutely spot on to the right weight that we want on this platter. I've checked with Technics and it's been measured and it's right there. The cartridge is a Sumiko Starling. This is our go-to cartridge for the SL1200. Starling, the Hana Blue are interchangeable. They're about the same, we're very similar, and that's our most popular option for this level turntable. Then I've got some test records here. I've got both the Hi-Fi News and the analog, the Ultimate Analog. My scale, I've got another cartridge, I've got a oscilloscope, and the physgometer. So we're going to use a mix of this stuff. All right, so let's inspect the parts in question. We've got our instruction manual. This here is a syringe, and it's already pre-filled with a super high viscosity damper fluid. I suspect it's 100,000 CSD or CTS. I'm not quite sure. We'll know in a minute. We've got an Allen wrench to secure it, a little set screw that has a piece of plastic at the end of it. We've got the thing that, sort of the paddle, I'll call it, that goes inside of the well, and here we have the well. And check out this machining on this piece. This is where it's really a great bargain. I mean, this thing is absolutely beautifully built in the USA. Looks like it's probably been milled from a piece of solid aluminum. I can't imagine it being a casting. And it's just beautiful. And this comes in both black and silver. If you have a 1210G, you'll notice that both the tone arm, the plinth, everything is absolutely black. So you're going to want to pick the right color. So having a look at the instructions, it mentions about the optimal resonant frequency of the tone arm, somewhere between 8 and 12 hertz. That is exactly the frequency range at which the tone arm resonates. And that's a sympathetic, meaning it's the ideal resonant frequency. Then it mentions that the fluid dampening all but eliminates the shock-induced resonances. And those are both from the vibration of the arm, the energy in the air generated by the speakers, et cetera, et cetera. And it also claims that fluid dampening will extend deep bass response, making serious warps child's play, and put an end to lead-in groove hopping on cue down. And that's a really important point. I'll try to illustrate that later. And another good mention is that we have seen over the years some very, very good tone arms that have fluid dampening built into them. Technics doesn't do it, obviously, and that's why we've got this beautiful product with us. All right, for installation, we're going to essentially attach both of these pieces, then we're going to fill it up. And it says about halfway, and that's going to be important so we don't make a mess. This stuff is super, super sticky, and once you get it on something, especially if you've got a black turntable, if you get this fluid anywhere on the black turntable, it's not going to damage it, but it's hard to get that sort of shine from the oil off of the table. So we're going to be super careful filling it up. All right, our first order of business is to unpack the set screw, insert it into your Allen wrench, and start it. So we're going to want to go in right to the point where it sort of protrudes from there, and then back it out a tiny bit so that we're almost flush with the, and this is going to essentially slot into here. Pretty self-explanatory. It only fits naturally in one spot. Now you will notice that as you tighten it, it has a tendency to kind of rotate up a tiny bit. So you have to secure it in place with your other hand. So let me illustrate that. So it's sitting here, its natural position, and as I tighten it, it tends to lift up a little bit. So you kind of want to keep your hand and keep it securely in place while you tighten it. Now that set screw has a nice piece of like Teflon or plastic at the end of it. So you can give it a nice snug fit without being afraid it's going to mar the aluminum on the arm. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to inspect it from this view here to make sure that it's parallel. Now, even after you've tightened it, it will have a little bit of a play to it. It will lift up and down a little bit because it is a pivot point there, but just kind of have a look at it from this particular angle and make sure it's parallel to the top of the plinth. Now, I did forget to mention earlier, before doing absolutely anything, remove your head shell, put the cover on the stylus and put it aside so that you don't risk damaging anything. All right, next we're going to locate a little paddle, and this is going to be a little trickier, but this only has one place where it can go, and it's right on the lifting arm of the tone arm. So if you drop it into place, it's going to be the same exercise where you want it to sort of sit flush. And also, in order to minimize how many turns you're going to have to do, try to get the set screw to the point where it's just flush with the inner surface right here. It'll really make it a lot easier. So just screw it in until it sticks through and then just back it out just ever so slightly. So that is in fact the trickiest part of the install. It's difficult finding the hole on the set screw. So you just have to take your time with it. Before going much further, this is a good time to check for clearance. Make sure that this is in fact sitting snug, and then you can exercise your arm and sort of watch the paddle track through the well and make sure it doesn't come in contact with anything that would be terrible. So you can see here that we've got great clearance in just about any motion of the tone arm. So I'm going to fill it about halfway through of the syringe and then give it a little bit of time to settle down and see where I am in terms of capacity. All right, I'm not quite at the halfway mark, so I'm going to go ahead and fill the rest of the contents of the syringe. So I suspect it's come pre-measured to exactly the right quantity. Now you will notice a bunch of bubbles that have formed through the pouring process, and those will settle out in time all on their own, so I wouldn't mess with them. Just let it sit for a bit. So this is what it looks like. You can make out the bubbles right in the trough, and if I exercise the arm, now remember this is going to happen extremely slowly as you're playing a record, so even though if I go quickly you'll see the fluid start to accumulate, but that would never be the case. And that's part of the reason why we don't want to fill it all the way, is that it will overflow if you do. All right, and just exercising it a bit got rid of some of the bubbles. So here's the resulting look. It looks almost like it came this way from the factory. The color match is really good, and the fact that it's also finished in aluminum and perfectly molded to the tone arm. Makes it really look like a factory option. And here's a different angle of the operation. Now, the viscosity on this fluid is extremely important. I suspect that it was chosen specifically for the resonant frequency of the arm and for maximum dampening. So I wouldn't experiment with different fluid since this is in fact designed for the SL1200 for this tone arm. So now in terms of maintenance, obviously you've got to be careful from this point on that the turntable does not get skewed or lifted in any side, so you'll spill some of the fluid. It'll be a very slow moving spill, but it'll be definitely tricky to clean up. Also, if you've got a dust in your environment, that will settle into the fluid and you may need to change it at some point. For most homes, it's probably fine indefinitely, at least for years and years, especially if you keep the dust cover on. All right, at this point, I'm gonna just quickly set the tracking force on my cartridge because I haven't used this one last. This will track at 2 grams exactly. And now I'm going to grab a test record and see if I can do a before and after compliance test and see if there's any change. The first thing that's super apparent is sort of this silky smooth motion that the tone arm has acquired. It really just feels next level at this point. I mean, it always felt great, and this slight friction or resistance gives it a great feel. All right, since we're going to be doing some critical measurements, I'm going to go ahead and take the trouble and center the record, the spindle. This is a super cool tool from DS Audio that allows you to find the dead center of the actual record. So that's essentially this position within the platter. Obviously, the more centered it is, the more accurate it's going to be. And records are cut hastily, and the hole doesn't often land in the exact same place, so that's what this thing does. All right, so we're going to be using the Hi-Fi News Analog Test LP, and it's got on side B the super cool track for track 2. It's called the Cartridge Arm Lateral Resonance Test Sweep. So it's going to sweep from 25 hertz all the way down to 5 hertz. Now, this is all below human hearing level, mostly, but what we're going to be looking for is essentially deflection on the tone arm. It's going to start to vibrate, and we're going to try to identify what the highest point of vibration is. Now, I suspect this device is not going to change that resonant frequency, but it should probably affect the amplitude of that resonant frequency. Obviously, the lower it is, the better it is for the entire system. So let's go run it without the paddle in place and see where we land. As the manual recommended, optimal is 8 to 12 hertz. This record states that generally a resonant frequency is between 8 and 15 hertz. So a little bit more forgiving on the record recommendations. All right, so I'm going to drop the tone arm. I've got a pretty low volume, so I'll rattle off the frequencies for you. And just look for deflection of the cartridge. It's going to essentially start vibrating.
17.
So that's 17 hertz there. 15 hertz, still nothing.
13.
At 13, we start to see it and hear it.
11 hertz.
At 11, seems to be maxed out.
9 hertz.
And at 9 hertz, we're barely seeing any deflection at this point. So it's somewhere between 11 and 12, I would say. And here's the same test with the paddle in place.
17 hertz.
The 17,
15 hertz.
15 hertz, still nothing.
13 hertz.
13, quite a bit.
11 hertz.
11, still more.
9.
And 9 is gone already. So just about the same, really not much of a change. So as suspected, the compliance of the tone arm assembly is not changed by using the fluid dampener. What is affected is difficult to measure. I tried to do it with an oscilloscope. I was not able to. In reading a little further on the technology, the actual attenuation or the dampening is more for the up-down motion than it is laterally. And this helps quite a bit with warp records. So if you've got a record and it's got a little bit of a warp to it and you've got the arm going up and down, that causes your speakers to essentially thump in and out. So most of the benefit is going to be in the up-down motion. I suspect it also has some benefit laterally as well, but maybe not as much. And also there's quite a bit of mention of people that are having issue when they drop the cartridge that it will jump. The SL1200G in particular has a really good tone arm lifter. It's pretty silky smooth, as you can see. It drops down beautifully. But perhaps if you're using one of the earlier turntables, or perhaps the 1200 GR2, which doesn't have a silky of a motion, you will definitely benefit. People have complained that the lifters on both the 1300 and the 1200 GR2 is not as good as the ones on the 1200G, so this might be a nice Band-Aid for it. A couple of additional things to note: if you do buy the turntable from us, and you'll see online that we've got packages for all the Technics models, and you can get them pre-configured with a great cartridge mounted, calibrated using our 12-step calibration process. If you purchase the fluid dampener at the same time, we will install it for you. So all you'll have to do is fill the well. Everything else would be in place. And the other thing to note is a lot of you like the Little Friend automatic tone arm lifter, and we sell tons of those things. So that's a little device that mounts right about here that lifts the tone arm up at the end of the record. There's not enough real estate for both, so you have to sort of be mindful whether you want a Little Friend or not. It will not fit. As you can see, it would interfere with each other. Bit of a bummer, but it's not a big sacrifice. If you're looking for performance, this is the accessory to put in that space. If you're looking for convenience, the Little Friend is definitely top-notch. Now, if you like these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to keep them coming your way. And if you're looking for any of this equipment, skyfiaudio.com is the website where you will find it all. We have an incredible amount of Technics information in our knowledge base. If you go to skyfiaudio.com, on the first page, you will see a link to our knowledge base, where I talk about every single model of the Technics lineup, all the accessories, upgrades, etc. So again, skyfiaudio.com. This is Fernando. I really appreciate you watching.